Australia, officially called the Commonwealth of Australia, is a country and sovereign state located in the Southern Hemisphere, in Oceania. Its capital city is Canberra, and its largest city is Sydney. It is mostly desert country. Commonwealth of Australia. Flag. Coat of arms. Anthem. Advance Australia Fair. Duration. 55 seconds. 55. Royal Anthem. God Save the King, N1. Duration. 55 seconds. 55. Capital. Canberra. 35 degrees 18 minutes 29 seconds south 149 degrees 07, 28 inches E. Largest city. Sydney. Official languages. None at federal level. Common languages. English N2. Demonyms. Australian. Aussie colloquial 2-3. Government. Federal parliamentary constitutional monarchy. Monarch. Charles III. Governor General. Sam Mostyn. Prime Minister. Anthony Albanese. Deputy Prime Minister. Richard Marles. Chief Justice. Stephen Gagler. Senate President. Sue Lines. House Speaker. Milton Dick. Legislature. Parliament. Upper House. Senate. Lower House. House of Representatives. Independence from the United Kingdom. Federation, Constitution. The 1st of January 1901. Statute of Westminster Adoption Act. The 9th of October 1942, with effect from the 3rd of September 1939. Australia Act. The 3rd of March 1986. Area. Total. 7,692,024 square kilometers, 2,969,907 square miles, 6th. Water percent. 0.76. Population. 2024 estimate. 27,690,604 51st. 2016 census. 23,401,892 5. Density. 3.6 per square kilometer, 9.3 per square mile, 236th. GDP PPP. 2017 estimate. Total. 1.24 trillion United States dollars, 6/19. Per capita. 49,882 United States dollars, 6/17. GDP nominal. 2017 estimate. Total. 1.39 trillion United States dollars, 6/13. Per capita. 56,135 United States dollars, 6/10. Gini 2012. 33.67. Medium 19th. HDI 2015. 0.9398. Very high second. Currency. Australian dollar AUD. Time zone. UTC plus 8 to plus 10.5, various N3. Summer DST. UTC plus 8 to plus 11.5, various N3. Date format. DD per millimeter, YYYY. Driving side. Left. Calling code. +61. ISO 3166 code. O. Internet TLD. O. Australia is the 6th biggest country in the world by land area, and is part of the Oceanic and Australasian regions. Australia, New Zealand, New Guinea and other islands on the Australian tectonic plate are together called Australasia, which is one of the world's great ecozones. When other Pacific islands are included with Australasia, it is called Oceania. 27,009,000 people live in Australia, and about 85% of them live near the east coast. 10. The country is divided up into 6 states and 2 territories, and more than half of Australia's population lives in and around the cities of Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth and Adelaide. The first people to live in the country were the indigenous Australians. Many of them died from smallpox during colonization. Australia is known for its mining coal, iron, gold, diamonds and crystals. It produces wool, and is the world's largest producer of bauxite. 11. Its emblem is a flower called the golden wattle. Australia is also known for its animals. The national symbols of Australia are the kangaroo and the golden wattle. Scientifically, perhaps even more important are its two monotreme mammals, the platypus and the echidna. Geography. Change. Map of Australia. Köppen climate types of Australia. 12. Australia's landmass of 7,617,930 square kilometers, 2,941,300 square miles, is on the Indo-Australian plate. 13. The continent of Australia, including the island of Tasmania, was separated from the other continents of the world many millions of years ago. Because of this, many animals and plants live in Australia that do not live anywhere else. These include animals like the kangaroo, the koala, the emu, and the kookaburra. The duck-billed platypus and the echidna are completely unique. People first arrived in Australia more than 50,000 years ago. These native Australians are called the Australian Aboriginals. For the history of Australia, see History of Australia. Most of the Australian colonies, having been settled from Britain, became mostly independent democratic states in the 1850s, and all six combined as a federation on the 1st of January 1901. The first Prime Minister of Australia was Edmund Barton in 1901. Australia is a member of the United Nations and the Commonwealth of Nations. It is a parliamentary democracy and a constitutional monarchy with King Charles III as King of Australia and head of state, and a Governor-General who is chosen by the Prime Minister to carry out all the duties of the King in Australia. Regions and cities. Change. See also, List of cities in Australia. Australia has 6 states, 2 major mainland territories, and other minor territories. The states are New South Wales, Queensland, South Australia, Victoria, Western Australia, and Tasmania, which is a large island. 14. The 2 major mainland territories are the Northern Territory, which is huge, and the Australian Capital Territory, ACT, which is not much more than a city. The population is about 26 million people. 2021 census equals 25,890,773. Most Australians live in cities along the coast, such as Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide, Newcastle, and the Gold Coast. The largest inland city is Canberra, which is also the nation's capital. The largest city is Sydney. 1.5. Australia is a very large country, but much of the land is very dry, and the middle of the continent is mostly a hot desert. Only the areas around the east, west, and south coast have enough rain and a suitable climate, not too hot and dry, for farms and cities. The island state of Tasmania has a more balanced climate than much of the mainland. Climate change. Change. All the capital cities except Perth and Darwin are in the southeast of the country. There is now increasing rainfall and flooding which affects this region, which is ominous threatening. It is thought this is caused by climate change, and may continue to get worse. 16. The BBC report comments. In the past 3 years, record-breaking bushfire and flood events have killed more than 500 people and billions of animals. Drought, cyclones, and freak tides have gripped communities. The BBC report continues. Nowhere is this a bigger issue than in Queensland. It is home to almost 40% of the 500,000 homes projected to be effectively uninsurable. This means people can't get insurance because the risk of flooding, in one season, or fire, in another season, is too great. History. Politics. Change. The Chamber of the Australian House of Representatives in Canberra. Anthony Albanese, Labor, is the current Prime Minister since 2022. Australia is part of the Commonwealth of Nations. Australia is made up of 6 states, and 2 mainland territories. Each state and territory has its own parliament and makes its own local laws. The Parliament of Australia sits in Canberra and makes laws for the whole country, also known as the Commonwealth or Federation. The federal government is led by the Prime Minister of Australia, who is the Member of Parliament chosen as leader. The current Prime Minister is Anthony Albanese. The leader of Australia is the Prime Minister, although the Governor-General represents the King of Australia, who is also the King of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, as head of state. The Governor-General, currently His Excellency Sam Mostyn, is chosen by the Prime Minister. Culture. Change. A Greek festival in Australia. Australian fish and chips. Australia was colonized by people from Britain, 29, but today people from all over the world live there. English is the main spoken language. Christianity is the main religion, though all religions are accepted and not everybody has a religion. Australia is multicultural. All its people are encouraged to keep their different languages, religions and ways of life, while also learning English and joining in with other Australians. Australia has many immigrants from different countries around the world. Famous Australian writers include the bush balladeers Banjo Paterson and Henry Lawson, who wrote about life in the Australian bush. More modern famous writers include Peter Carey, Thomas Keneally and Colleen McCullough. In 1973, Patrick White won the Nobel Prize in Literature, the only Australian to have achieved this. He is seen as one of the great English language writers of the 20th century. Australian music has had worldwide stars, for example the opera singers Nellie Melba and Joan Sutherland, the rock and roll bands Bee Gees, AC/DC and INXS, the folk rocker Paul Kelly, musician, the pop singer Kylie Minogue and Australian country music stars Slim Dusty and John Williamson. Australian Aboriginal music is very special and very ancient. It has the famous didgeridoo woodwind instrument. A fancy didgeridoo. Australian TV has produced many successful programs for home and overseas. Skippy the Bush Kangaroo, Home and Away and Neighbours are examples. It has had well-known TV stars, such as Barry Humphries, Dame Edna Everage, Steve Irwin, The Crocodile Hunter, and The Wiggles. Major Australian subgroups such as the Bogan have been shown on Australian TV in shows such as Bogan Hunters and Kath and Kim. 30. Australia has two public broadcasters, the ABC and the multicultural SBS, 3 commercial television networks, 3 pay TV services, and numerous public, non-profit television and radio stations. Each major city has its daily newspapers, and there are 2 national daily newspapers, The Australian and The Australian Financial Review. Australian movies have a long history. The world's first feature movie was the Australian movie The Story of the Kelly Gang of 1906. 31. In 1933, In the Wake of the Bounty, directed by Charles Chauvel, had Errol Flynn as the main actor. 32. Flynn went on to a celebrated career in Hollywood. The first Australian Oscar was won by the 1942 Kokoda Front Line, directed by Ken G. Hall. 33. In the 1970s and 1980s, Australian movies and movie stars became world famous. There were movies like Picnic at Hanging Rock, Gallipoli with Mel Gibson, The Man from Snowy River and Crocodile Dundee. 34. Russell Crowe. Kate Blanchett and Heath Ledger became global stars during the 1990s, and Australia starring Nicole Kidman and Hugh Jackman made a lot of money in 2008. Australia is a popular destination for business conferences and research, with Sydney one of the top 20 meeting destinations in the world. 35. Sport. Change. Don Bradman. Sport is an important part of Australian culture because the climate is good for outdoor activities. 23.5% Australians over the age of 15 regularly take part in organized sporting activities. 36. The most popular sports are Australian rules football, rugby league and cricket. In international sports, Australia has very strong teams in cricket, hockey, netball, rugby league and rugby union, and performs well in cycling, rowing and swimming. Local popular sports include Australian rules football, horse racing, soccer and motor racing. Australia has participated in every Summer Olympic Games since 1896, and every Commonwealth Games. Australia has hosted the 1956 and 2000 Summer Olympics, and has ranked in the top 5 medal winners since 2000. Australia has also hosted the 1938, 1962, 1982 and 2006 Commonwealth Games and are to host the 2018 Commonwealth Games. Other major international events held regularly in Australia include the Australian Open, one of the 4 Grand Slam tennis tournaments, annual international cricket matches and the Formula One Australian Grand Prix. Corporate and government sponsorship of many sports and elite athletes is common in Australia. Televised sport is popular. Some of the highest rated television programs include the Summer Olympic Games and the grand finals of local and international football competitions. The main sporting leagues for men are the AFL, Australian Rules Football, the NRL, Rugby League, the A-League Soccer, and the NBL Basketball. For women, they are the AFLW, Australian Rules Football, ANZ Netball Championships, Netball, the W League Soccer, and WNBL Basketball. Famous Australian sports players include the cricketer Sir Donald Bradman, the swimmer Ian Thorpe, the cricketer Shane Warne and the athlete Kathy Freeman. Art festivals. Change. Just 60 years ago, Australia had only one big art festival. Now Australia has hundreds of smaller community-based festivals, and national and regional festivals that focus on specific art forms. 37. Indigenous life. Change. Australia is home to many animals and plants that can be found nowhere else on Earth, except perhaps New Guinea. 38.